reminds me of Venice.
Before we dive too deep into the Sea of Solitude, be very aware that this is not your average exploration or platformer game at all, in the sense that it deals with some very heavy subject matter that doesn't really let up through the entire 4 or so hour experience. The fantastic setting though and presentation of the game will get most gamers on board initially, but it is absolutely not for everyone. In the end though, almost every aspect of the game takes a back seat to this solemn story of self-reflection, adaptation, and growing up. You begin this adventure playing as Kay as she awakens to a mysterious yet strangely inviting setting, seemingly only inhabited by monsters that know way too much about your past. Almost the entire game features accompanying dialogue between Kay and other monsters and characters that you meet along the way. The voice acting is mostly great and is subsequently the complete driving force to learning more about the character's past and eventually answer the mysterious question of what she is doing here in the first place. In terms of the actual gameplay, your goal is to traverse this environment by foot or boat using a flare that guides you in the right direction. Wherever the flare leads will trigger the next event, usually in the form of collecting light to advance the environment or collecting a new memory to advance the story. Because your flare tells you exactly what to do next, there really isn't a whole lot to think about in terms of the gameplay. Chapter 3, however, is an absolute highlight, but there are only very light platforming elements sprinkled in for the majority of the other chapters.
I guess. Wow, we're just joking.
As you can probably already tell, visually the game is simply a delight. The contrast between the various sea-based environments is spectacular, matching the wonderfully appropriate soundtrack. Really, anytime there was a striking atmospheric change, I absolutely had to pause to take in my surroundings and made me wish there was more of a reason to explore the different levels. It should be noted that the game runs very smoothly and had no technical or visual hiccups throughout the entire experience.
I'm completely torn apart. I have family, I have friends, and yet here I am, feeling lonely again.
I do really want to emphasize the somewhat uncomfortable feelings this game puts the players through. You will not feel good playing the vast majority of the game, and you will certainly apply Kay's life experiences to your own life, which will make you think inwardly way more than the typical video game escapisms that we're all used to. Because the story takes such a deep introspective look into Kay, the only sense of relief I ever really felt would happen briefly when an oceanic environment would unveil itself from underneath the sea, which was refreshingly calming every time it happened.
It's beautiful.
Before we get to the final review, I wanted to mention that I think the first half of Sea of Solitude is essentially perfect. The story initially unfolds in such a captivating manner, which is powerfully relatable to the point where the game is uncomfortably suffocating, but in a good way. I wouldn't call it fun to play per se, but it really is captivating and unlike anything I've experienced in a video game before. I don't want to ruin anything either, but the storyline revolving around Kay's younger brother is engrossing and their dynamic is quite powerful. However, about halfway through the game, the story moves to the next two monsters. It becomes somewhat predictable, the voice acting is more uneven, and the writing is heavy-handed. The gameplay itself is also more repetitive. It's not bad or anything, but it just doesn't live up to the impressive first half, making the game feel a little uneven in the end. Overall, I greatly appreciate both the vision and execution of Sea of Solitude, and it scores an 81%. It is not necessarily the most fun game you'll ever play due to the heavier subject matter, but that was clearly intentional by the writers and developers of the game. The game also heavily skews its attention towards the story versus the actual gameplay, and while I found that to be a nice change, I know many people will not enjoy that at all. The overall pace of Sea of Solitude is also best described as relentlessly solemn, and while that is not going to be everyone's cup of tea, it is quite an original and thought-provoking experience for those who want to give it a try.
You should have let me do the talking.